Hey guys, Rick here. Hey, just real quick this week, I wanted to briefly talk about reasonable expectations. And this kind of is all encompassing when we talk about reasonable expectations. Obviously, we talk about reasonable expectations when it comes to what we expect in job performance and those types of things. But sometimes we lose the aspect of reasonable expectations being set at the initial onset of a job or an interview. What you have the right to ask, what can you expect? What is the employer or what is your supervisor or your team members expecting from you, whether it's in a specific job duty, whether it's in a particular project that you're working on. It doesn't really matter either way. Reasonable expectations are kind of an unwritten thing, and I think we don't communicate that well enough. But also, reasonable expectations are something that you can talk about right from the onset. I mean, the job I'm currently in as an operations manager, I had a conversation at the beginning about reasonable expectations, not only what they expected of me, but what I expected of them. And one of them was a direct conversation that I had with the president of the company, my direct supervisor. And the conversation we had was simply along these lines. My reasonable expectation and his reasonable expectation needed to be that we weren't always going to agree. And that when we didn't agree, I wasn't just going to simply say, yeah, okay, that's what you want me to do, so I'm going to go ahead and do it, but that we would discuss it, have a better understanding of the reasoning behind it. When you understand something, when you can help other people understand something, they may not agree 100%, but it's easier to get their buy-in. It's easier to get them to say, yes, I understand, and I will pursue that. Until such time as we prove that it's not. So it's finding common ground, but again, it's not this ruling where you rule with an iron fist and you say you're going to do this because I said you're going to do this. It doesn't work in parenting. I can assure you it's not going to work in the business environment. So you want to set those reasonable expectations of what, this is what I want to see happen. And even as you're having that dialogue, reasonable expectations can change, because you may say, well, as an example, obviously from a business trend standpoint, if you have someone who says, I expect no matter what, you're going to hit $150 million worth of sales this year, you need to be able to throw out and say, oh, okay, $150 million in sales under the current market or under the current environment. But you need to be able to establish, okay, but there is potential that the economy will change. There's potential that we could lose a major client due to no fault of my own, or any number of factors. You want to bring those to light because you want not excuses. These are not excuses, but these are conditions and changes that happen that are beyond your capabilities, that you've established ahead of time that, hey, this may be a reason why this isn't going to work. And if so, I want to make sure that we have an understanding and agreement that if these things take place, we're going to be able to agree that I may not make those numbers due to these factors, or I may not be able to perform this project due to these outside factors. So reasonable expectations, again, that's a portion of what we're talking about. Obviously, again, job, what are the expectations of the job? I expect you to do this and this and this. And again, we're not creating excuses. We're creating alternate possibilities, things that could potentially happen, so that we have an understanding, because no one wants to fail. And you always have that underlying, well, but this potentially could happen and this potentially could happen. So ultimately, with reasonable expectations, what we're talking about is we're talking about opening a line of communication. You're establishing communication that's going to allow you to continue to move along. Reasonable expectations make it so that when you go into a review process, again, an annual review, a 90-day review, a 30-day review, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. It should literally be a review. You should be going back and talking about things you're already aware of. So we remember that this took place and these things happened, and your attendance was exemplary, except for that one particular point in time where your daughter got tonsillitis and you had to go. Whatever the factors are, it should be a review. And it's a review of reasonable expectations. How well did you meet those expectations? But if you don't establish those expectations on both sides, how can you possibly know what it is that you're attempting to review? Or that you're on the same page. So reasonable expectations are a critical component of everything that we do. So I just wanted you to spend some time to think about that. I wanted to throw a little blurb out because I know I've talked about it to my team. And it may be something that if you have interaction with them that they may mention to you. So, reasonable expectations, again, critical component of everything that we do. And it should be a two-sided dialogue. It should absolutely be a two-sided dialogue. It should not be if you've got an employer or a supervisor saying, here's what I expect of you. A, is it reasonable? You've got to establish that. And B, what expectations do you have of them? And have you established that? And if not, that's something that you should work on. It's something that I think is critical. I've learned over time that teams become much, much more successful when they understand what it is you're looking for. And can they change? Absolutely. And as long as that dialogue maintains and continues to move forward, you'll have no issues with it. But again, reasonable expectations, absolutely critical to a successful team and to you to be successful in what you are in any endeavor you're trying to undertake. You need to have reasonable expectations. All right. You guys have a great week. Thanks so much. Talk to you.